When I was 15, I started my style journey. I'm now 32. Here are some lessons that I wish I'd known back then that would have really saved me a lot of time, energy, and anguish. This is the I Help Men Dress Better podcast, where you guessed it, help you, probably, assuming you're a man, dress better. Today, I want to focus in specifically on competence and relatability. It's a topic that I've been thinking a lot about lately. I finally got some language around it, and that's really given me the scope to start thinking about things in this context or in this, with this language. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell if you are watching this on YouTube. Like I said, subscribe, hit the bell, drop a like on this post. It really helps. If you are listening to this on Spotify, please check out my other episodes on other topics. I hope you'll learn something. I always try to put as much value into my podcast as possible. And one of the main reasons I started doing a podcast is because I was writing shorter content and I didn't feel like I was able to fully flesh out a lot of my ideas. And so I wanted a longer format where I could really kind of dive into a single idea and, really fillet it out. So competence and relatability is something that has been coming up a lot lately. One of the impetuses for this is Vanessa Van Edwards. She's been coming up in my YouTube algorithm a lot lately. And she talks a lot about competence versus warmth. And I think that competence versus warmth, competence versus relatability, they're really the same, or they're different angles or pieces of the same social concept. And it's so interesting because this is something that I've known for a long time. It's definitely a topic that's been very central to my work, but having this specific language has really, I think, opened up a way that I can talk about it that will hopefully make it more accessible, especially since this language, at least in my algorithm, is all over the place. It's also, a buddy of mine he also made a post. Give me a moment if I can just, I don't know why. Every time I'm recording, I forget everyone's names, and it's the best, and I hate it. So it's like as soon as I'm recording, I forget my buddies' names, and I have to go find them again in order to call them out, which is such a bummer because I could have totally saved myself time and energy. Here we go. I'm like, Matt. Oh, okay. Matt Mosich. Great dude. Awesome. For some reason, last names just fall out of my head sometimes. Maybe it's an ADHD thing. Maybe it's I don't know. But yeah, so this was a topic that kept coming across my algorithm through Vanessa Van Edwards, and then Matt Mosich made a great post about it. And it's so interesting because I really view that style is language completely changed my relationship to style. I had actually spent almost a decade focusing purely on the aesthetics of style, on figuring out how I could look appealing, and specifically for the purpose of kind of making people like me. I really didn't like who I was. I really didn't like myself very much. And I had this idea that if I could look right, then I could kind of fool people. I had this idea that everyone else kind of had it figured out and put together. And the reason why other people were likable and popular was because they were able to look right, and people could see that they were the sort of people they wanted to know and be friends with. And if I could just hack that, then I would be just as interesting and desirable as them. And what's interesting is I wasn't necessarily wrong. It's like I knew that style was language. It's like I knew that style communicated something. I didn't have the verbal language to explain that, and I also was coming at it from a place of self-loathing instead of a place of self-acceptance and self-love. And that's actually something I talked about in my last podcast. So if you want to hear more about that, you could definitely check that out. And I also will continue to talk about this topic because it's very central to my work. So, like I said, I was working really hard to dress well in order to fool people into liking me. And on the other end of that, after I had spent so much time, reading this GQ thing and watching this, Alpha M video and, buying this piece of clothing and that piece of clothing and looking around me and seeing what cool people were wearing and figuring out and patterning what it was that I would have to wear in order to, fit in or like stand out in a cool way. After all of that, I came across the idea of style as language and the concept of, style archetypes and building a character for yourself that reflects who you are authentically and not, who others are or who others want you to be. And that just completely flipped the script for me. That just completely upended my life in a positive way. And that's one of the impactful moments in my life that really just locked me onto this as my path to, this is my gift that I need to give to the world. Like, this is the work that I need to do. This is the work that, I find fulfilling and that I think could really help people, was this realization of style as language and also just what that actually means on a deeper level. So it's really interesting because I get so much inspiration from public speakers as well as sales, because both of these careers, they're really centered around communication and the importance of good communication. And it's really interesting because you can see, like, metrically the difference, right? A good salesperson is going to close more deals. And hopefully, if they're good and moral and ethical, they're going to be helping more people, right? Like, two people could be very intent on helping as many people in their lifetime as they can. And if one of them has better sales skills, they will help more people. It has nothing to do with who's more noble or moral or devoted. There really is a skill set, a language-based skill set. And the same thing applies to public speaking, right? You could have the most amazing story, you could have the most amazing message, but if you can't deliver it in a way that connects with people, if you can't learn to communicate, if you can't learn the skills necessary to communicate your message, somebody else with a worse story could be more impactful on the world. That's just the reality. And it's just so interesting that style is the same way. And I view style the same way, and I know style is the same way. Style is language, the same way that you could be the most amazing person and not have the skills to communicate that and not have as big of an impact in the world as you could have if you just built those skills. The same way with sales and public speaking, style is in that same boat. I view style very much as a stop on the journey of self-development and self-improvement. It's not the end. I think a lot of people look at it as vanity because they think, oh, you just want to be good looking kind of to fool people, which maybe that is where people start. I don't think there's anything wrong with having maybe a more base or negative motivation to take a positive step. Sometimes we are better motivated by our baser desires, and the journey can put us in a positive place on the other end, like it did for me. I started my journey from a place of pain and self-loathing and really negative intentions, and I ended it off in a place where I was able to accept myself and come to terms with myself and really build confidence from a true place, not having to, build achievements and fake, admirable qualities in order to get other people to validate me, in order to, like myself. I was actually able to accept me as I am, warts and all. And so, yeah, there's nothing wrong with starting in that place, but you could have all the best intentions, and the person who can communicate better is just going to make the bigger impact. So I love that connection of, like I said, the public speaking and sales. And I get a lot of inspiration from that. And it's just like that I got inspiration from Vanessa Van Edwards with the concept of competence and relatability. And again, like I said, Matt Mosich also made a post in Public Speaking about competence and relatability. And it's actually a topic I've made posts about in the past, but I didn't have this language for it. And it's just, I find it to be so much more powerful. But here's the idea, and you can let me know in the comments what you think. We live in a relatability culture. A lot of that has to do with YouTube and social media and the way that is. We love relatable people, and people flock to relatable people. And if you make content or you do anything kind of in the public eye, I would imagine you're on social media. That's how you found me, and that's why you're listening to this podcast. So I would imagine you're going to be somewhat familiar with this. But people build followings around relatability. People build followings around these kind of, free and open personalities and being themselves and being authentic. And a lot of people think that that's kind of all there is to it. So they get online, and these highly competent people, people with just decades of work under their belt and lots of accomplishments, they usually take one of two routes. They'll either show up and they're incredibly stuffy and unrelatable. They're so focused on competence that they don't really get anywhere because they're not relatable. Or they really go deep into relatability. There's someone who's coming to mind, and I don't want to call them out, but there's someone who keeps showing up in my feed, and he's a great guy, and I have nothing against him, but he promotes a product that's, it's sales related, and he's very involved in, talking about hiring the right salespeople and making sure that you've got the right hires. And he's talking to a corporate audience, like he's talking to people in charge of hiring salespeople. So these aren't, relatable people. These are, managers and higher ups. And he's wearing, like short shorts and just like mismatched t-shirts, like random graphic tees. And it's very relatable, right? This guy, he's in his living room and he's, just wearing loungewear. He's wearing the clothes he would wear at home. It looks like, he could have just come from the gym or a treadmill. Very, very relatable, right? Oh yeah, I wear sweatpants at home. I'm just like that. That's me, right? But it undermines his competence. It undermines the communication of competence. When you communicate, when people see you, when people interact with you, they actually learn a lot more from your nonverbal cues. You can say a lot of things. We're very obsessed with verbal language in Western culture. I don't know what it's like in the rest of the world specifically, but we're very language based, especially, like we read and we speak and we write, but there is a lot more power in the visual. Our eyes are our most relied upon, our most relied upon sense for information. And the mismatch between what we say and what is people see visually can actually really, really throw you off. Like if you've ever spoken to anyone who's like fake nice, right? I think like this is actually something Vanessa Van Edwards talks about, which is that idea of, when you meet someone that you don't really like and you do that, like, hi, oh, it's so good to see you, right? It's like this very fake, there's certain facial cues that give away that what you're saying isn't true. There's body language cues, right? Like if you're really like nervous and you get up to give a speech and you're like, "Hi, I'm so excited to be here." It's like we can see you're not. We can see that you're nervous. And when you don't acknowledge that, it actually throws things off. And style, because it is a visual language, because it is not a spoken language, there's so much subcontext and there's so much in there. So it's like if you show up and talk about how competent you are, but your visual identity, your visual communication tells a different story. If your visual communication says, "I'm at home lounging on my couch, I'm not professional, I'm casual right now, and not only am I casual, but I'm also, you know, I'm not even coordinated, I'm not intentional, I'm just, I'm still wearing my clothes from high school. Haven't bought anything new in a decade. I don't groom, I don't take myself seriously." If you're sending these messages visually, right? Like people get these messages, and whether they're right or wrong, it doesn't matter. People are getting this message. If people get the message of "I don't care about myself," and you are trying to tell them what you did in order to self-care, to care about yourself and improve yourself, there's gonna be a disconnect. There's going to be, dissonance between your message, your verbal message, and your visual message. And that I think comes a lot from this issue of competence and relatability. It used to be that men were very competence driven, and socially, women have been very relatability driven. And that's actually that's one of the reasons why women face challenges in the workplace, is because they try to be warm, they try to be relatable, and then when they're showing their competence, people don't take them seriously, and it's really unfortunate. But men are falling into this same trap. It's like men forever have been, a competence culture. Men have heavily relied on competence, and something changed somewhere where maybe we just lost the confidence in our own competence, or we lost the skills to build that self-esteem where we see ourselves as competent. And so a lot of men have built this shell, this kind of armor to protect themselves by being as relatable as possible, by putting relatability first, and by putting warmth first, by putting kind of this like shell of mediocrity, like I'm just like you, and there's no reason for you to envy me or be scared of me. Don't be intimidated by me. You don't need to respect me. You just need to like me. But then you come and you try to say something about your area of expertise, and people don't listen and they don't respect you, and it's just like, why? What's going on? Like, why? And even if people do, even if you're able to get past other people's barriers, we perceive ourselves. We have mirrors. We live in a world with mirrors. We can look in the mirror and see the mismatch visually between our internal identity and our external identity. We walk through the world and judge other people, and it when people are insecure, they tend to judge less favorably. I mean, I know I did. I can only speak from my own experience, but I used to judge very unfavorably. And I definitely find a correlation between judging other people unfavorably and turning that inside. It almost feeds off of each other. It's like you don't feel good about yourself, so you judge other people, you kind of project that. But now that you've created this sort of like standard for yourself, now when you don't reach it, you have more self-loathing. You've put more pressure on yourself, and now you come back with more self-loathing, and now you have more loathing to project out into the world. So let's bring this home. Let's land this plane. It is important that if you are competent, that you learn how to communicate and project that competence out into the world. It's not your responsibility to be relatable and inviting. It's your responsibility to be true and honest. If you are competent in a specific field, if there's, an authentic, competent higher self, you need to communicate that to the world in order to interface with people and get ahead in life And I don't mean get ahead of other people. I mean get ahead of yourself in order to succeed, in order to be the best you that you can be. Because if everyone only sees your relatable side, right, your lower side, the side that the lowest common denominator that everyone can relate to, and that's the only side that you can see as well, it's a lot harder to grow yourself and to maintain growth that you've built. You know, if you're still dressing like 10 years ago, most people are drastically different people than 10 years ago. And if you're still dressing like that, that means you're dressing like a guy that you left behind, that you worked for a decade to leave behind, but every day you still see him in the mirror. Don't you think that would undermine you in some way? I'm definitely going to have to continue this topic. We're past the 20-minute mark, so I'm going to call it the end of this podcast. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. I hope this sparked a broader conversation, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on competence versus relatability and how you see that in the way people communicate, in the way people dress, especially men. If you've noticed that in yourself, and you know what's coming up for you as you listen to this conversation. I'm Shlomo. I help men dress better. You can find me on LinkedIn, Shlomo Homnick. I have a bright pink banner. You can't miss it. Also check me out on YouTube. There's likely, this is either going to be on YouTube or Spotify. So yeah, so this podcast is also on those platforms. You can find me on it's the I Help Men Dress Better podcast. Hopefully you can find it. If you can't, there are links on every one of my posts on LinkedIn. So find me on LinkedIn. That'll be the easiest. And then you can click through and listen to some of the other podcast episodes. I'd really appreciate it if you left a like, if you subscribed, if you left a comment, join the conversation. I'm looking forward to seeing you there. And if you're curious more about me, my work, and how you could work with me, if that's something that you're interested in, a great place to start is to take the archetypes quiz on my LinkedIn profile. So check that out. It's in my featured section, and as well as linked in all of my posts. So start there and make sure to book a call with me at the end so that we can meet. No pitch slap, but I would love to talk to you. Take care and have a great day.